Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Walters Wanderings Travel Podcast. My name is Scott Walters. I'm your host, and today we are going to be talking about rail travel. And rail travel is unique, rail travel is wonderful, and rail travel is certainly a great option for many different types of travelers. And we're going to talk with Jarrett Kittinger from Amtrak Vacations and Rail Bookers in just a moment. But before we bring him in and talk with him about the whole allure of rail travel, I just want to let you know that if you do book an Amtrak vacation trip with Walters Wanderings Travel, 4 days or more, I'll get you $50 off of your cost. And if you book a rail bookers trip, so if you go with rail bookers through me at Walters Wanderings Travel, I will give you $20 off per day. So if you do a 10-day trip, you'll get $200 off. If you do a 2-day trip, which we can talk about, and there are 2-day trips you can do, that'll be $40 off, because every dollar helps and can help make your vacation that much more affordable. So we do have Jarrett Kittinger on. He is with us from our friends at both Amtrak Vacations and Rail Bookers. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is what is the allure and what is the draw of rail travel these days?
That's an awesome way to start, Scott, because the allure itself is what makes rail travel so popular, no matter where in the world the traveler is looking to visit. So there is, of course, a distinct difference between airline travel, drive vacations or drive trips, and rail trips. Rail trips are slower. Let's just get that out of the way, right at the beginning. They do take a little bit of more of the time to get from A to B. However, they are exponentially more scenic, whether someone is traveling on the train along the Pacific coastline, through the Colorado Rockies, through the Canadian Rockies, the Swiss Alps, the Italian countryside, or wherever around the world, which the rail can connect to. And so, yes, it takes a little longer, but it's a lot more scenic. I always argue that it's a heck of a lot more relaxing because there isn't the high intensity of dealing with the stressors of the airports or, of course, highway systems. I don't care if you're driving in the U.S., driving in Europe, wherever it may be. So that is the allure. It's a lot more relaxing, a lot more scenic, and frankly, can go a lot of places that folks either know about or really don't even know about for that point.
Well, that's true. I mean, we all know about the romanticism of trains, whether we were watching Albert Finney in the movie The Murder on the Orient Express, or if we're singing along with Steve Goodman with the City of New Orleans train song. There's a lot to recommend about trains. So I guess let's start with the Amtrak Vacations part.
Yes.
Explain what Amtrak Vacations does and where they go, and then we can discuss the different type of accommodations afterwards.
Absolutely. So Amtrak Vacations, the company for which I work for, is the national vacation partner of Amtrak. So there is a distinct difference between Amtrak itself and our brand, which is more of a private vacation partner and private entity. What we do is we book and bundle our vacation itineraries, our vacation packages, along with the extensive spots, extensive places that Amtrak can travel to, which is worth noting, over 500 train stations throughout the United States and a few up in Canada as well. 46 of the 48 contiguous United States, and through many of or most of the major U.S. cities. And also worth noting, and definitely something I want to highlight as always, the U.S. national parks as well. So what we do is we book those packages, which are inclusive of accommodations, hotel stay or lodging stay, and sightseeing for those places that the traveler happens to be visiting, along with those reservations and accommodations on Amtrak.
So basically what you're saying is you can go and pick between about 500 places, 46 out of 48 states. You can go to the national park system, mostly out west. You can also do things city to city. And another thing about train travel, which is different than airplane travel, is these train stations are in centrally located parts of the city, whereas you
Yes,
can be 45 minutes, even an hour away from your city when you land at an airport. So, and sometimes just to navigate the airport takes 45 minutes to an hour just to do that.
absolutely.
From the time you get off your airplane to the time you find your ride into whatever city it is. So, those are some advantages. So now, when we talk about accommodations, obviously, if there's lodging involved, some of these Amtrak vacations will include stops between cities, which is great, or obviously the national parks. So there'll be lodging availabilities at those locations, and then there's also accommodations on the trains themselves. So
Yes.
obviously, now me, I'm a coach guy. I just give me my coach seat. You make sure it reclines. There's plenty of room, more leg room than an airplane. You have Wi-Fi set up, plugs. The all the Amtrak trains have been refitted to offer all of that. And I'm fine. I'm fine. People around me may be upset that I snore, but I'm asleep, so that's the way it goes. But
That's their problem.
there are other accommodations as well on these trains, and let's talk about some of those.
Yes. So, and by the way, you aren't the only one who is comfortable in coach, whether it's just for a daytime ride or an overnight journey. I've seen plenty of folks enjoy and stretch out and relax in the coach seats, no matter when they're traveling. But the two main cabin accommodations on board Amtrak to note are happens to be the roomette and the bedroom. Now, there is a distinct difference. The roomette is, let's call, cozy. It is the smaller, more compact of the cabins, but they're also the more cost efficient of the cabins. During the day, there's two seats that face each other, very comfortable seats, big plush seats. There's always a big picture window retrofitted right into the side of the cabin. So it is basically the window on the world for those travelers in that roomette. And at night, everything folds down to bunk style sleeping. The next step up is known as the bedroom, which is the bigger of the cabins. It has a long couch and a chair as opposed to two chairs. Of course, it has the big picture window, and it's still bunk style. And you will find that that is pretty much the way it is on almost every cabin in North America, no matter which train system one is traveling on, all except for one, but that's something to talk about later. The main difference between the bedroom and the roomette is, number one, the size. The bedroom is frankly bigger, and the bathroom accommodations or the restroom accommodations. The roomette's restrooms are down the hall. There happens to usually be 3 or 4 restrooms in that roomette designated train car, only to be utilized for those travelers in that designated train car. Whereas the bedroom has the full bathroom and shower accommodations within the cabin itself.
Well, there you go. So, and again, when we come to the accommodations, when you're in coach, you can certainly get food and meals, and there are dining cars. When you're in the roomette and the bedrooms, how does that work as far as eating goes?
What's really convenient for the traveler is that the meals are factored in to the price of the cabin that they're purchasing, whether it is a roomette or a bedroom. And those booked for those cabins have priority reservation access to the dining car. And it's worth noting that the dining cars on board the trains, they're really much of a highlight of traveling on board the trains. There's always a designated head chef with a team of cooks, a full menu to choose from for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. And of course, dietary restrictions, allergies, and the like, of course, can always be accommodated. And you can either, as a traveler, enjoy the meal in the dining car itself, or if you and your traveling companion simply want to have the meals brought down to your cabin, that's just fine as well.
There you go. Room service. Well, I like that.
Yes.
And certainly you get good food. Obviously, there's a bar car for those people who want to imbibe. I always like to have a beer while I'm, watching my stuff on my device. because that's the Wi-Fi is another great feature. I've done the auto train, and the Wi-Fi doesn't really kick out. I mean, it's very rare. Just a couple of spots in some of the really rural areas, the Wi-Fi
Yes.
will be a little glitchy. But and I'd say 95% of my trip on the auto train, which is what I'm used to. The Wi-Fi is just fine, and I can take my laptop and I can stream a movie. I can watch. I can go to my television provider app and then catch up on my shows. So it's all good that way. And again, most of the people that are on the train are very pleasant. Both the employees on the train and the other passengers. I think the business about not being so anxious really comes into play, especially on something like the auto train, which is my favorite, and takes your car with you down to Central Florida and then back from Virginia, and it's a really good ride. I've never had a bad experience on it. But no, Amtrak vacations, there's lots of different things. You can go from 2 or 3 days, and you can go up to a couple of weeks even on some of these trips. And it's really an amazing thing. So, but let's pivot now and talk about rail bookers. Rail bookers is a unique and different operation because it basically covers most of the non-domestic stuff. So we're looking at obviously all of the international areas. We're looking at Alaska as well. And so let's talk about the rail bookers experience and what kind of travelers would benefit from going on a rail bookers vacation.
Well, we actually see it pretty much across the board of the range of who is traveling on rail bookers. And let me elaborate. So given our menu or lexicon of destinations, which globally is 700 around the world through rail bookers and of course Amtrak vacations, which we just covered, but predominantly within the areas of Europe, Canada, and Alaska, as you mentioned. So we have travelers that are first timers, say going to Italy, that have never gone to Italy or never gone to Europe before and want to hit the traditional big three, as I call them, Venice, Florence, and Rome. We have those that are very well traveled and go to Europe every year and know it like the back of their hands. We have folks that are also going to Europe or going to other areas of the world, Alaska or Canada, for other reasons, such as maybe they're perhaps booked on a cruise, like a river cruise or a Mediterranean cruise. They would like to extend their journey to do a little bit more before or after, or some people even book multiple cruises at once, but have to connect the dots between the two and have something to do in between. So there's quite a lot of different folks that will travel with us. And the other thing that is always worth noting is whether they're a first timer to Europe or they know Europe like the back of their hands, for instance, we, again, bundle it all together, but we can also create a tailor-made itinerary to fit what the client, what the traveler is looking to do. So if on this first time around, they absolutely need to see A and B and C, we will make sure that that is on their itinerary. Or if they are familiar with, London, and they're familiar with Dublin, and they're familiar with Edinburgh, and they have their favorite spot that they've gone to a million times and they can't wait to go to it again, we really can tailor an itinerary towards the client's needs and requests.
So that's great. Now, when you say 700 available locations worldwide, or shall we say basically Europe, Canada, and Alaska, they range from different sizes of cities. Obviously, the big cities, London, Paris, Rome, etc. But let's talk about some of the small towns that are covered as well. What are some of the smaller town highlights?
Well, you can get anything from a Paris to a Colmar. You can get anything from London to tiny little hamlets in the Cotswolds. You can get anything from Edinburgh to the fishing town of Mallaig in Scotland. So it really covers the gamut. And it's not solely Europe. I mean, we can do throughout Canada, whether it's Vancouver or Toronto to the Canadian Rockies. We can do areas of Australia from Sydney and Edinburgh to, the little town of Bendigo, which is like this little, hamlet town in Australia. Because the rail connectivity is pretty extensive, not just with the 500 stations in the US connected by way of Amtrak, but some 15,000 plus stations throughout Europe, and of course across Australia and other areas of the world. It really doesn't matter to a degree where the client wants to go. Dollars to donuts, we can almost certainly get them there. I don't know the name of the town offhand, but my boss, who has grown up and lived all around the world, from growing up in South Africa to now living in Canada, but spent a period of his youth for 5 years as a child in a small little town on the coast of Spain. And he took his wife last year on a Spain itinerary with rail bookers. And of course, they hit the big destinations, Barcelona, Madrid, what have you. But for a day, he wanted to go visit this tiny little town on the coast that he hasn't been since, I think he was 7 or 8 years old, and he's in his late 50s now. And we were able to get him there. So wherever the client is looking to go, it's more than hopeful that we could figure out a way to do that. And again, it's Europe, it's Canada, it's Alaska, it's South Africa, it's Australia, parts of Asia, and we are breaking into areas of South America this year as well. Worth noting.
Well, I think it's really important to note, and here's something that just came to me while you're talking about all of that. A lot of people now have college-age children who are studying abroad, and not only for the children to do a weekend getaway from wherever they're studying, say Barcelona or Seville or Freiburg in Switzerland or somewhere like that. We could set up the itinerary for them and their friends and do so very cost effectively, because there's many different levels of accommodations in different places they can go. As well for parents, the parents themselves, they can go ahead and visit their child in whatever city, even if it's not a big city in Europe, and they can take the train. They can find the nearest gateway, airport that they have to land to, say Zurich to go to Freiburg, or say Barcelona to get to a town nearby, or so forth and so on. So it does become something that maybe would be of interest to those kind of travelers as well, not just the adventure seekers or the ones that want to bang out the touristy places that we all know and love.
To that point, we find that, and I mentioned the whole extending on a cruise component earlier, which is 34% of our business. But in that same vein, it doesn't have to be just extending on a cruise trip. It could be extending on another type of trip, an escorted tour. Maybe somebody's rented a villa in Tuscany. Or to your point, it could be extending on a visit to their son or daughter or family member, extending on a corporate event, a business trip that one has to take, extending on a social event like a wedding or a family reunion or whatever. And we can get them from those big places to those small places, vice versa, so that one, again, to whatever one wants to do, the connectivity and the availability of the trains to get them there and to get them beyond really goes to the heart of what we do and how we do it. And as I mentioned before, as we do book the packages, the hotels, the sightseeing, transfers from the airport to the hotel, heck, we can even book ferry tickets from your traditional one connecting, Ireland to the bigger areas, to even a Barcelona to the Grecian islands on these luxury overnight ferry journeys. Really, it is whatever the client, whatever the traveler is looking to do. we can make it happen.
Well, that's impressive, because I know I have some travelers who are looking into the rail trip and looking into going off the beaten path. And when you're with a regular kind of tour operator, getting off the beaten path is tough. And
Yep.
when you're doing something, on your own, completely on your own, you still have the worries of things like the rental cars and traveling on, maybe the wrong side of the road. or
Hey, it
or
happens.
going to get the rental car and it's a standard transmission and not an automatic. So there's all these different other variables that come into play. So I guess now, you said that the most popular destination in Europe is Italy. Why do you think
Correct.
that is?
Honestly, it's just pure volume. I mean, and I don't have to tell you, Scott, it felt like in 2023, everybody, their mother, brother, sister, mailman, and dog walker wanted to go to Italy. And that could just be it looks like you
I
yourself.
went. I went. I went. I did 3 days in Rome, and then I did a Mediterranean cruise. So I went to Italy as well. Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think that was number one. There's naturally people that go to Italy, like I said, first timers or those that regularly go, and of course those that could not have gone to visit during that hiccup of a few years prior to that. But everybody knows what I'm talking about, and it is it is one of the really the three areas, I'd say four, that first timers feel comfortable visiting, whether it's England, Ireland, France, or Italy, those traditional countries that folks, when they go to Europe for the first time, that's where they lean on. But it is also, to a point, to your point, connections on cruising or connecting to other, it's an access point to other areas. We often find travelers will combine our number one selling European destination, Italy, of course, with our number two selling destination, which happens to be Switzerland. So, now with Switzerland, it's number two, not simply due to the volume of travelers that naturally go to the country, but because of the incredible and extensive train systems through the Swiss Alps. So, whereas Italy, it's a number one seller just due to the amount of travelers that want to go there every year as it occurs. With Switzerland, it is the amount of train options from the Bernina Express, the Glacier Express, the Gornergrat, heck, even the famous Orient Express travels through the Swiss Alps, making its headway eventually into Venice. And by the way, we can book those iconic and luxury rail journeys, whether it's the Orient Express through the Alps and into Italy, the Rovos Rail or the Blue Train in South Africa, connecting to places like Victoria Falls, for instance, the Maharajas Express in India, the India Pacific down in Australia, just to name a few. Heck, even we can combine the very popular, ever popular Trans-Canadian route on the Via Rail, the 4-day journey between Toronto and Vancouver, with the commonly requested Rocky Mountaineer product through the Canadian Rockies. So there's many, many options and many areas of the world, not just in Europe, that we can help people travel to.
And the best way to do that is people get in touch with me, and I'll get in touch
Absolutely.
with my buddies at Rail Bookers, and I will say the turnaround time is always very good.
Try and be that.
I usually get quote requests back in around 24 hours or so. So never more than 2 days. So I've never had to wait a third day for a quote. And I appreciate the expediency of Rail Bookers. And again, these have been everything from what we would call, sort of run of the mill, usual suspect kind of trips to things that are a little bit more intricate. And so that's why I think, and again, using the train, you have time to relax and all of that, but you still are able to stop in these towns and cities and be able to experience them, in some very authentic ways.
And I do want to highlight that the train can be a couple of different aspects, or utilized in a couple of different aspects of one's vacation. It could be the highlight of the trip, say in the overnight journey, long distance between Toronto and Vancouver, or as I mentioned, the Orient Express itself, where that is like the key component of the trip. Or it could just be a simple and easy way to connect from point A to point B, like your Venice to Florence, Florence to Rome on a traditional or usual suspect, as you use the term, Italy itinerary. It can also kind of be like a 50-50. Such as our ever popular Empire Builder, which is one of the more popular Amtrak routes, which connects between Chicago and Seattle, or the Southwest Chief, which connects between Chicago and Los Angeles, where the long distance journey on the Amtrak itself, the scenic journey, is half the trip, but the other half is visiting those exceedingly iconic bucket list destinations like the national parks. In case the Empire Builder, it goes to Glacier National Park, which is our number one selling U.S. destination, or on the way of the Southwest Chief, stopping over in the Grand Canyon, which is our number two selling U.S. destination. So it could be a highlight, it could be just the transportation piece, or it could be the 50-50 component of what makes the vacation special.
Well, that's all very good information, Jared. I really appreciate getting to talk with you today, because again, I think a lot of people sort of think that rail travel is maybe passé, or rail travel might not work for them. But for many different people and many different reasons, it could be a very, very great option to consider. And Rail Bookers does it with great aplomb, and Amtrak Vacations. Again, being the vacation package part that includes the Amtrak train system, is certainly, very commendable. And I know from people whom I booked that the satisfaction rate is 100%. So we always like that, so it's great. So again, just to reiterate, if you do book an Amtrak vacation package with Walters Wanderings Travel, and it's 4 days or more, and it's not that hard to do to get to 4 days, you'll get $50 off of your trip. And if you do any Rail Bookers itinerary that's 2 days or longer, I'll give you $20 off a day. But you have to mention this edition of the Walters Wanderings Travel podcast to get those discounts. So again, Jared Kittinger, I really appreciate you being on board today.
Thank you, Scott.
So much for the great information. And I'll be back with another edition of the Walters Wanderings Travel podcast soon. Everyone take care and have a great day.